name is Susan Maysides, and before I was married I was called Monk, and as I say at school, had a lot of trouble with children calling me Monkey. I didn't look like one though, fortunately. But I used to fight because of that. I used to hit them when they called me Monkey. I've always been like that. But I was born in a place called Bury. I'm sure people have heard of Bury. I was born in Rochdale Road, I think it was. I've forgotten where it is. But we moved to the countryside, which I enjoyed very much. But we had to walk a long way to school. It must have been at least a mile. It seemed a lot longer to me. I didn't measure miles or anything like that. I had a very happy childhood, and unfortunately, it's sad to say that because it was during the war, and a lot of people, I'm sure, didn't have as much happiness as I did in the war. I lived in a place called Burrs and Calrose. They now just call it Burrs, and that's the woods that are nearby, which we used to play in, and roundabout we used to collect blackberries, my sister and I, and I'm from a big family, 9 of us, 6 girls and 3 boys. I used to go out with my brothers a lot and do whatever they did, and sometimes, sadly, we had a girl got drowned because we went on the ice when my dad said, "Don't go on the ice, it's thawing." But I followed my brothers, and as we're going along, the water's all coming up after the feet, and I'm following them, and you know, and it was all fine. We got off there, and then we went to another place, and it was the quarry, and I was the youngest of the lot, and I was the one that was twisting them round for statues, and I did this boy over here. And when he was over here, I can still remember, and I must have been about 6, and he said, "I'm going over to my girlfriend. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be talking about this really, because it's not about the war, but it's before the war." And he crossed over, and as he crossed over, the ice cracked. I'm right at the edge here. And my sister and brother got the foot wet, but got out quick. 2 people were stuck in, and one of them, sadly, died. But I'm standing there, and my brothers and sisters left me. And I've told this before on a programme called Listening Project with a friend of mine, June, and we were lucky to be alive because they left us on the edge of the ice. And then my father came. When I saw my father, I only reached up to his knees, and I cried and cried then when he came, because the man, one of the men that was in the water said to me, "Go and get some help." He said, "It's bloody freezing in here." And I just stood there. I was petrified, never moved. Anyway, that's one of the sad things. But after that, I had quite a lot of happy times, because what happened was that suddenly I was walking along and my sister said, "Look at that woman. She's got all that sugar in her cupboard." I said, "Why's she got all that?" There was packets and packets of sugar. I thought she'll never use all that. And my sister said, "Well, it could be because there might be a war," and I didn't know what a war meant. I never even asked her. I never bothered about it. But the next thing I do remember, when I went to school, the teachers on the Monday morning, they were all shaking their heads like this at each other. And I thought, I wonder what's wrong? Apparently it was because we'd started the war, not started it, but we'd joined in with the war with Germany. I didn't know anything about it, as I say. But then a few days later, where I lived in Burrs and Calrose, a tiny village with 1 shop and 1 main street, no bus service, nothing whatsoever. But we did enjoy ourselves, as I say, the children, because we made our own enjoyment. We used to slide down on pieces of cardboard when it was icy on down hillsides and all that. But what happened was, to me it was great excitement, because all these soldiers came and they had horses, and I loved horses. I didn't know that I did, but I did love them. And it was wonderful to see this, because some of the soldiers, they started putting taps at the end of the roads on the pavements, you know, and I'm watching everything. I bet they thought, "Get lost," you know, but I still watched everything. And they set up a camp, and they were, the first day I remember, I was with someone, and they were all in a shed kind of having the tea. And I said, "What are you having for your tea?" And they said, "Polony." I said, "What's polony?" And they gave me some, and it was horrid. We said, oh, it's horrid. They said, well, don't ask questions anymore. Anyway, we went home, I suppose, after that. But what happened during the war, as I said, it was enjoyment to me because there was all this excitement going on in the village. There were camp concerts. We could go to them and we could get sweets without rationing. No coupons needed. A penny for a bar of toffee at the NAFE. And the soldiers all were friendly with me because they knew I'd got older sisters, and they used to say, have you got any older sisters? I used to say, yes, I have. And my older sisters used to come to the camp concerts and take me if they felt like it. And if not, I was left behind. But there was so many things that, you know, we had to go and get our gas masks and things like that. And we used to swing our gas masks and fight with them sometimes. I mean, when you think, we were little horrors, I suppose. But it was just the survival of the fittest. And there was so much things that they brought to the village, and it seemed to flash by so quickly. And before you knew it, they were leaving, and all the horses, and the snow was coming down, and I stood on the pavement and watched them leave, and I could have cried. Because I'd got to know people, especially one called Sergeant Miller. He was always asking about my sisters and things like that. And he always looked after me, you know, gave me things, sweets and stuff like that. Which to me, that was great, because when you're in a family of 9, you don't really get spoiled, do you? I don't think anyway. You kind of just have to get on with it. Full stop. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's a great start and very interesting. Tell me a little bit about your parents.
Oh, my parents. My father came from Kent, and he joined the army when he was about 14. I think his mother told him down in London, where Plumstead he came from, actually. And I think she told them about him, and he ran away from home and came to Bury and joined the Lancashire Fusiliers. And he was underage, of course, and I've seen the form he signed, and he signed saying he was telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And he always taught us to be honest. But I've read that since, that he joined when he was underage. And he must have met my mother. My mother was going out with someone else. But he said, I'm going to marry you. And my mother said, this is what she said. She said, you know, her mother kind of said to her, well, you can't refuse him marriage. He's coming all this way. And she had a boyfriend of her own, you know, and she broke his heart, apparently. But they got married, and he was away for 3 years then in the army. They didn't see each other. So, of course, she didn't have any children then. She got married, and my dad gave his wrong age, because you could do, I suppose. They didn't seem to bother about birth certificate.
This presumably was at the beginning of the First World War, was it?
Yes, it must have been, yes. He was in, as I say, he was in the war, and he was badly injured. He was blown up, he was a gunner, and he showed us his legs, and they'd all been stitched, and he had stitches across here. They threw him on a pile of dead men. They thought he'd died. Okay. And he moved, and when they saw him move, of course, they dragged him off. But he had to go back and fight after he was repaired, kind of thing, you know. But he was lucky to live, he said. So he had a hard time. And my mother, when she was 12, and my father, when he was 12, worked. My father, firstly, I'll tell you, worked in Sainsbury's, the very first Sainsbury's that was ever. And he used to sell butter. And he used to eat it because that's the only way he could survive. And he used to sleep under the counter at night. I don't know how that came about. His mother must have been a bit, you know, she was worried about him, but I don't understand that, but that's what happened. And my mother, when she was 12, they had to go in the mill half day, and she worked in doing winding and so on, you know. And I mean, it was a hard life when you think of it, 12 years old working. Nowadays, they don't know they're born, do they, towards that, when you think this is what happens with people, and I suppose it strengthens your character in a way. I started work when I was 14. I did newspapers, went round. And also, I had a Saturday job at a mill because my cousin went. I did what my cousin, I'm not a follower, I'm a leader, but in this instance I went with my cousin to this place, a factory. It was Hardman's Woolen Mill in Bury. And we used to climb in the looms. A German loom is massive. Don't know whether you know about it. And we used to clean them. And when I think back now, cleaning those looms and all the fluff, we had no masks on or anything. But we used to enjoy it anyway. We had lots of laughs and so on. And I learnt about weaving as well, and about people doing sign language. Have you been dancing? They used to talk like that and mouth everything. You know, I used to be fascinated watching everything. I must have absorbed it all because I did, you know, take notice of a lot of things. And I learnt about weaving and yells. Have you heard of yells? Where they pull them through and so on. And I watched people do that, and I learnt how to do it. It was quite interesting, but, you know, I wasn't there long, and then I got a job in a dyers and cleaners. And I enjoyed that, and I found out that I could add up very, very quickly. I didn't know that before, because at school I was a little devil apart from English and writing. I could do that, I was top at that. But the other things I didn't bother about, you know, I wasn't keen on. And when the war was on, going back to the war, I was glad when there was an air raid, because we could go in the shelter and sing songs instead of listening to history. I thought that was great. I mean, I shouldn't have thought it was great, but we didn't have, apparently, there was only one bomb that was dropped in Bury, and it was dropped in a pub called The Dungeon in Tossington, and it didn't explode. This is what I'm told. I've no idea about it, but people have told me this, you know, that's where the one and only bomb dropped on Bury. But when they used to have air raids, and my dad was there, he could explain whether it was a German plane over or an English plane by the sound of the engine. He'd say, now listen to this, and he'd tell me. I couldn't do it now, of course, couldn't remember, but he used to tell us things like that. So I suppose it kept us diverted away from the danger of anything, because we didn't see any danger. We were too young. We were just young enough to still enjoy ourselves, which was good, because then we used to start dancing, going to dances, you know. And that was why my father used to say to me, you shouldn't dance so much. I was going 5 nights a week. He said, you get TB. That's what they used to think, if you went dancing too much, you know, close proximity with men and so on. But that's what I used to do, dance a lot. My brother taught me. He used to say to me, get your legs back, you're like a bag of potatoes. Of course, he was my favourite brother, I've got to say that. He was, because I did everything with him, you know. And when we went dancing, he was a very handsome man, and all the women were after him. And when it was an excuse me dance, he used to say to me, they used to come and say, excuse me, and he'd say, come back after one round. And I bet those girls hated me, but I never bothered. I did what he said, you know, went back and danced with him so he wouldn't have certain ones. But as I say, to me, it was a lot of enjoyment rather than sadness.
That was during the war itself that you were doing
yes,
that, yes.
Because I grew up during it. You know,
yes.
14, I learnt to dance when I was 14.
I mean, you were aged 8, I think, when the war started.
Yes,
that's right.
that's
Do you
true.
remember anything about the day it started?
Only that, as I was saying, when the teachers were all shaking their heads.
Yeah.
But that's about all. There was nothing, you know, my father told me to be quiet while he was listening to the radio.
Yes.
Because I suppose I was talk. And he said, quiet. And he was listening. I suppose that was when war was being declared, you know, by Chamberlain, I think it was, wasn't it? I'm not sure.
So that's right. Well, yes, it would have been, yes. So the war started. Did you notice any, apart from the sugar, obviously, but were there other sort of changes taking place around you that were obvious, do you think?
Well, obviously that we couldn't have oranges and we couldn't have bananas. You could have oranges if you were pregnant, I believe. But what I didn't like, one thing I didn't like, and I still don't like, is queuing up. because my mother would say, they've got potatoes at such and such, go and get them, go to that shop. And we all had to go to different shops to get different things and queue up. And then when you got to the counter, they'd sold out, sometimes, you know. But this is what the hardship was, if you call it hardship. And then they'd say, they've got an island at Marks and Spencer's, go and get some, you know. Will you go and get me some? And so on like that, because they were so rare. Because women used to put gravy browning on the legs to make them look as though they got them on. And also they used to use an eyebrow pencil and do a line up the back. I'm sure you've heard all that before, but they used to do all that kind of thing, and it had to be accurate. They'd say, are you sure you've got it right now? Let me see now. And all that kind of thing. We used to have to make, do and mend, really, I suppose, with the war. Because there was a lot of things you couldn't buy in the shops. And it was absolutely marvellous when they got all the different things, you know, that we could rush and buy. But as I say, a lot of times we queued up and they'd gone, these things.
Yes,
yes. But I didn't feel any pressures of the war, apart from when there's, you know, at night time when the planes were coming over. And if my dad was there, I felt quite safe. I don't know why. But we did have an Anderson shelter. My brothers, I remember them digging and building this, you know, and they were arguing about things when they were doing it. But it was all metal, you know, you've seen them, the Anderson shelters, and we used to go in them into it sometimes, take candles in. And
was that, what was that like inside? Did you sleep in there?
No, we didn't sleep in there. I don't remember sleeping in there. I used to go to the air raid shelters. I don't know why. You see, that was perhaps before we got the Anderson shelter, I don't know. But sometimes we used to go down to the air raid shelters, and I used to go with my cousin. She was only 3 weeks different in age, so we were like twins. They used to call us the terrible twins, both at school and otherwise. And I'm sure we were, because when we went to the air raid shelters, there were people lying asleep on big cushions, and I didn't always know there was somebody there, and I used to go around jumping like this. And then, of course, when my cousin did it, and we were laughing, we thought it was funny, because we said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And we loved that, making a fuss, you know. We kept running around the shelter. But when my mother knew I did it, she said, you'd better stop, girl. Behave yourself, behave yourself. But of course I did it more and more when she wasn't looking, you know. That's our type of fun that we had, my cousin and I.
Yes.
And when VE, I know I'm jumping the gun a bit.
I was going to ask you about VE Day. So
when VE Day came, I do remember that. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I was the one that instigated a maypole, and we went into Bury K Gardens. I don't know why we blacked our faces. I think I didn't want to be recognised, I don't know. But I must say, that is one of the days that I really had a marvellous time, because we had this maypole, and we had a little baton from somebody who'd been in the army probably, I don't know, but we had these batons, and we were going round doing way down upon the Swanee River. That's why we blacked our faces, I suppose. But we've never before, when we've had a maypole, had people opening the purses and coming to us and loving it and telling us that they enjoyed it. And we enjoyed it as well, and we got big bottles of lemonade like that afterwards, drank them. And then we had fish and chips, we had money to spare. It was absolutely wonderful. That was VE Day, and I wrote a sign, VE Day, and put it near the maypole, you know, and all that. I do remember that, yes. That was when the Japanese, was that when we finished with when the Japanese had given...
that was VJ Day.
Because I can't remember dates and things, even though I talk about it.
VE Day was Europe, and
Yes.
VJ Day, I think, was later in 1945, when Japan surrendered. It was in the autumn. But so
I was oblivious to a lot of things. I just was, I suppose, ignorant really, when you think. I mean, I was enjoying myself, and that's all that mattered, kind of thing.
I mean, you would have been 14
by the end
of the war. That's
yes,
right.
that's right. That's true. But I enjoyed the war. I know you shouldn't say that, but it is true, I did. Because I was oblivious to the suffering of other people.
you probably didn't know any different,
No.
really. I mean, other than that you had 8 years before the war of childhood.
Yes.
But you, I mean, did you see any change taking place after the VE Day? Were there any sort of changes taking place in the world around you at that time?
Well, not after VE Day. No, I didn't. No, I didn't notice any different because I still used to go back to Carrow's when we'd left there, because we did leave there and move nearer to town, into town. But I still used to go back there because I like the countryside, you know. I believe now it is all lots of activities there, boating and things like that around there. But I can't say that I noticed a difference. No, not really.
No.
Perhaps it was a bit of a relief knowing that we wouldn't have air raids, perhaps, because they used to disturb us, of course. You know, when you might be fast asleep and the sirens were going. And when I hear them now on television or anything, it still makes me, you know, feel a bit strange. It's takes you right back, really, when you hear that.
Tell us a little bit about your later life. I mean, you were 14 when the war ended, more or less, in Europe. But life didn't end for you, and I mean, you've had a lot of time since then.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have. And I've had a variety of jobs because I believe in variety. I can't stand routine. I'm bored to death with routine.
Yes.
And as soon as I got to know a job, I'm afraid I would leave after for about 4 years. I don't think I stayed longer than 4 years in any job.
No.
And eventually I became manager of the Cardoma after I went to catering college, but I had to leave before the course was finished because I worked for Cardoma as a trainee manager, and they sent me to Swansea to open a new branch with other people, not alone. And Bristol, I went to Bristol and opened a new branch. So I couldn't go back to college because I'd, you know, missed most of the course. But I then became a manager and had my own place. Deansgate I used to work at because they had 7 Cardomas in Manchester. They had them all over the world, I believe. They had them in Paris as well, but I never got sent to Paris. But when I was starting as a trainee, I used to go to different parts of the country. I went to Chester and managed if anybody was off and things like that. And then, well, I can't say I became a manager of a block of flats because that didn't happen until the last days of my working life. But eventually that's the type of work I did. I did a lot of office work as well. I did wages because I could add up very quickly. That was before machines. We used to do Kalamazoo. Have you heard of that?
Kalamazoo, yes.
Wages and things like that. And I used to go around to different places and do that because I worked for an agency and I preferred that. I don't know why, I must be an unsettled person. I just like new experiences.
Definitely someone who didn't want to let the grass grow under her feet by the sounds of things.
Well, that's true, I suppose.
Yes.
I never liked to be in the same thing because I'll tell you, one of the reasons was I met a man at one of these offices and I can remember it was Gus, I think it was called, Great Universal Store. I worked there a week and I wouldn't go back. But he was sitting at this desk, and in the desk there was beveled out where his arms had been. And he told me that he had done that. And I said, how horrible, you've been here 30 years. He said, yes. He said, and I've worn that out. He'd worn the wood out of her desk. Well, the following week, I said to the agency, I don't want to go back there. And they said, why not? I said, because they have a bell when you go for your cup of tea and a bell when you come back. I don't want that kind of thing. I'm sorry. And they said, well, we'll send you somewhere else. So they did. So I used to work all around Manchester and travel on the train until I decided I was going to go and live in Manchester.
Just going back to the war, because you mentioned...
sorry.
No, that's all right. No, because I invited you, and I'll come back to that, what we were talking about in a moment. But just coming back to the war, did you travel at all during the war? Do you had any sort of experiences?
No, I didn't travel, no. No, I think we stayed there till the... I don't know how old I was when I moved. I know that I don't remember. I moved to another school called All Saints, and I don't remember that there was any difference. No.
No. Just moving on a little bit further. I mean, you were monk and you became sides.
I did.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I'll tell you how I met my husband, which was very unusual, I thought. I haven't heard anybody else meet the husband like that. I worked with this other girl that was 6 foot tall, and it's important because we were good friends. She was a trainee as well. And she said to me when we had a weekend off, she said, let's do something we've never done before. I said, for instance, what? And she said, shall we hitch a lift? So anyway, when she's hitching this lift, I'm not taking any part in it because I'm absolutely bent double laughing at her. 6 foot tall, and she's not doing it like this. She's just going. I couldn't stop laughing because she was so feeble and I couldn't do anything. And all these cars kept zooming past. And then this car stopped. And it was a Jag. Mm-hmm. I didn't know at the time, but that was my husband-to-be. I sat in the back seat, she sat in the front with him. I wouldn't bother with him. I thought, you don't know who he is or what he is, you know. Mm. But anyway, afterwards we got out of the car and went for, I don't know whether we went for a drink or a coffee, and we started talking about Norfolk Broads. And I'm terrible with names, still am. It's a weakness I have. And he said to me, he was called Tony, and he said, where did you pick up the boat? Because he'd been on Norfolk Broad. And I said, instead of Lowestoft, I said Levenshulme. Well, he started laughing. I thought, what are you laughing at? You know, and they both started laughing, because my friend lived in Levenshulme at the time. So that's why I must have said it. And we got talking, and that's, I did find him interesting right away. And he was a fencer. I'd never met a fencer before, you know, foil and all the rest of it. And I was asking him about that, and he said, I don't know whether it was true, but he said he was an Olympic, it was an Olympic time, and he said that he was a reserve for it. And he was a master of fencing, because he took me to them and I saw that he adjudicated them, you know. And he said, but I'm telling you now, it's boring, and it was boring just watching him do that, you know. But I found him interesting, and then he said, where do you want to go? And we said, well, we were just going anywhere. And he dropped us off at New Brighton, and he said, will you come for a meal with me tonight, the pair of you? I'll meet up with you. I'm in Liverpool or something. He said, I'll come and pick you up. Anyway, I never told my friend, but all day I kept thinking about him. I don't know why, because telling you now it doesn't sound very exciting, but he did. Must have had an attraction, a physical or something. He was good looking. And when he said his name, I said, that's a funny name, Sides. He said, I don't think monkeys are clever. I said, don't you say that about my name. Anyway, we did meet up for the meal, and I didn't like him at night because he'd had a drink and it changed his personality. Anyway, he took me home to Bury. He dropped off. I was left with him on my own, and everybody said, you didn't know who he was. It could have been horrible to you. I know, I could. I took a chance, didn't I? But anyway, he took me home to Bury, and we arranged to meet on the following Tuesday. And I had a rule. I never said anything about this rule, an unwritten rule, and I never waited for anybody longer than 15 minutes. And I worked at the Cardoma, as I said, and we arranged to meet on Market Street, and he didn't turn up on the Tuesday. And then on the Wednesday, he came into the Cardoma in Deansgate. He didn't know where I worked, which Cardoma. And when he came in, he was all smart in a suit and a trilby, you know. And I wouldn't serve him. I was standing in for somebody who was off sick, and you had to get in you had to be able to do every job. And I said to my friend, will you serve him? She said, why won't you? I said, I'm not serving him. I wouldn't speak to him. And she kept saying to me, speak to him. No, I said, I'm not. I don't want to be bothered with him. He just didn't turn up. I'm not bothering with him. Wouldn't bother with him. But she must have told him that it was my afternoon off. And he waited for me. And I'd arranged to meet someone dancing for the afternoon, you know. And he said, oh, you can't go there. And he put his arm around me as I'm coming out. And he said, you can come with me. He said, I'll take you with me. Anyway, he did make me laugh. He said something to make me laugh. And I thought, he does make me laugh. And I went with him and that was it. We got on all right. And that's how I met him and so on. So.
Now, did you have family?
Pardon?
Did you have any family?
Yes, I have one son.
Very different to you being one of 9.
I know, absolutely. Most people have had more than one. I think I'm the only one in the family that's had one.
Probably the sensible one.
Well, I don't know. It was hard work because he didn't sleep until he was 3. And when he slept, I thought he died. Believe me, I did. Because he never slept till he was 3. He would wake all night. He was lively and full of life, you know, but I never got any sleep. And I used to say to people, I wouldn't mind if I could just get some sleep. You know? It was hard. I found it hard. And I did want another child, though, but my husband didn't. So, you know, I didn't like him being an only one because I don't think it's fair, really.
But that's the way it is sometimes, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
If you were to think back over your life, because I know you've done all sorts of things. I mean, in recent times you've been working on local radio, I think.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, how I started on the radio, I was working at somewhere as a relief manager at a block of flats. You know, we were there just in case anything went wrong, if the building needed anything doing. We didn't look after people, what I'm saying. It wasn't that, because there were 40-odd people, and they owned their own flats. And I heard it on the radio that they wanted volunteers. So I phoned up, and that's how I came to go on. And I have interviewed quite a few famous people, which I will brag about.
Of course.
But I forget all the names, but I have Alistair McGowan I enjoyed very much. And I said to him, by the way, at the end, I said, I've really enjoyed it. I haven't been able to interview you properly because I couldn't stop laughing. And he did make me laugh. And he said, well, when I come to Stockport, I'll come and see you. I said, oh, great. And I said to the producer when we'd finished, he said he'd come and see me. Do you think he would? He said, no. And he never did. When he came to Stockport, to the Plaza, he never came, you know. But sometimes we got free tickets for different shows. When they had the Rat Pack, we got free tickets for that. I interviewed them, and I had a photograph taken with them afterwards, and I enjoyed all that, of course, because I suppose I've done a lot of amateur dramatics. I did that when I was young, but it's never left me. Because it's a certain thing that's within you, you know, you can't, it is in you, you've got to. And I said, I've done Wythenshawe radio as well, and I said to the man there, I said, acting, they say if you're not nervous, you're no good. I said, and when I've gone on stage, people have said to me, oh, you're nervous? And I said, no, I'm not. But I knew that I was all right because the producers used to write to me and say, will you come, we want you to do the lead in this play. And every play that I did when I was young, I was the lead. So I must have been all right. But I wasn't nervous. And the man at Wythenshawe Radio said to me, you know why you're not nervous? I said, no, why? I said, you mean because I'm no good? He said, no, because you're a natural. Now, I was pleased with that.
Yes, of course, yes.
Because it was a compliment, and you don't often get compliments.
No. Just to, before we wind up, because we've done very well, I have to say. If you were to think back over your life, are there any sort of particular highlights you'd like to mention? This is the killer question, of course. I mean, it's quite difficult, but and I've surprised you with this one. But is there anything that you would go back, or alternatively, if you were talking to a younger person today, what would be your advice to them for a long and enjoyable life?
Well, somebody gave me some advice, and that was that to be your natural self is very charming. And don't be, and I just can't, I hate that, and I would say that to people myself. Be your natural self, and I try to be. And if I'm putting my voice on ever, it's only because I'm trying to speak clearly so that people understand what I'm saying. Because some people with accents, you can't always understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
And I know I've got a Lancashire accent. I'm not ashamed of it. But I do try and speak clearly, and people say, don't put your voice on, it spoils you. So I would say be natural to people. That's all I can say, because everybody feels differently about their lives. They don't feel like I feel.
No.
Some people can stodgily go on for 30 years and work in the same job. I hope you haven't done that. Because I could not do that.
No.
I just like new things to happen.
Yeah.
And you can't always have them.
No.
But this is a new experience for me.
Right. Well, I hope it's not been a bad one.
No, I've enjoyed it.
Susan, thank you very much for
Thank
taking
you.
part with WarGen. Thank you.
Thank you.